Hey, good afternoon. This is John Kreutzer and Brandon Arvin here with Smoking Lamp Scholars. It's been some time since our last episode, which was on covering a topic alcoholism. Um, Today we're going to talk about some mental health, uh, some mental health stuff. We'll touch on intrepid spirit. Um, I've got some good news, some bad news, and some really good news I'd like to share with everyone. And I'm going to reference a couple articles about the SGB, the Stellate Ganglion Block, and I have difficulty saying that, not sounding drunk, like a drunk Colonel Sanders or some like fried chicken guy. A Stellate Ganglion Block, so it's hard to pronounce. But that's the topic of today's podcast, today's conversation. How you doing, Brandon?
Good, man. I know it's been a while, and I know things just been really busy.
Right.
I think good busy, but really busy. I am interested to hear about this treatment that you have, and for everyone listening, like we, I've explicitly asked John to like, hey, like, don't tell me what it is. You say it's great. Like, let's just share it with everybody. That way, it's as authentic as possible. So I'm really interested to see what it is because I mean I had a medical appointment this morning with pain management, and afterwards, right, the guy was like, "Look, I don't know what to tell you. Right, you need a new shoulder, and you're just too young for that." So, and the only thing he said was, "The good news is like you have a really positive attitude about this, and there's nothing I can do for you." I'm like, well, I said, there's really no other option right now, you know. So I'm interested in any kind of other treatments that are available, especially because I'd like to think I've been through most of them, but I haven't been through this one. So this would be really exciting.
Right. And for the listener, if there's like we are experiencing some slight audio issues, I'm at a rental house in Florida, in Destin, Florida, with my family and parents, having a great time, some vacation away from everything. So if you hear something weird with the audio, um, it's because I'm on a Wi-Fi, sitting on a patio with a day bed and some nice surroundings. So some technical difficulties. So first, good news. The Marine Corps' tape measure broke because I'm like 17% body fat, apparently. So being 41 years old, and I've lost about 30 pounds altogether this year, which is that's not as easy. Again, being 40 years old, that's some good news I wanted to share. And a lot of that has to do. I haven't really shared this with a lot of people. I call it pseudo sober. So about last December, I found myself drinking too much hard liquor again. And it was about mid-December, and I was like, why am I doing this? I had a friend who guy I served with back in 3-5. We went to SOI together. We were in the same platoon. At 39 years old, he needed a liver transplant because he drank himself to death's doorstep. And the doctor told him, if you don't stop drinking, you're going to die in 3 weeks. I give you about 3 weeks to live. You're about dead. So that just combined with like, what am I doing? This, and Brandon's been sober. A lot of my friends have gotten sober. So I spent the first 3 months. Normally I do a dry January just to kind of like, temper the calories. But really, this year was more about resetting that relationship with alcohol. Um, it's no secret at this point that I have a pretty robust PTSD diagnosis, and why alcohol can numb some of that, in the end, it just exacerbates it terribly. So I spent the first 3 months of the year sober, and I've drawn some pretty hard limits. Like I will never drink hard liquor ever again. I actually had to explain that to my dad because our nightly ritual is like, hey, we pour some Woodford into a glass, and that's a bonding type moment. It's My dad is a responsible consumer, whereas my dad will pour one finger When I put some ice and some water, I'll put like one finger of air and the rest, bourbon and maybe a piece of ice. So yeah, you know what I'm talking about, man. So I had to tell him like, hey dad, like it's okay if you want to have some Woodford. I can't do that anymore. I've actually haven't had any the entire year. I can enjoy some beers, and by some beers, that's like 1 or 2 beers, then switch to sparkling water for a couple hours, wait for that, BAC to settle, to settle back to nothing. And then, if you want to have a beer or two, again, that's cool. And I've really enjoyed, that total reset of that relationship, because I don't think a lot of people understand just how dangerous alcohol can be. And the hard liquor is a poison, to people who you have a personality. Like, as Marines, we go full send on everything, and that includes, unfortunately, drinking. So the good news is lost a bunch of weight, new relationship with alcohol. I can have a few beers, but it stays at a few beers. Like I can't touch hard liquor. It's not for me, man. It's no. Even wine, I haven't had wine. I'm like, yeah, that could tune me up pretty quick. So I think, like, having a beer or two, that's cool. But anything else, it can become uncool real quick. So that's the good news. The bad news is I'm not going to say his first name because I don't want, out of respect for the family. But another gentleman I served with in 3-5, he drank himself to death. They found him dead in his house a couple of days ago. And he had been out. He survived. He was an OIF-1 vet, survived Battle of Fallujah, and my first deployment in 2006. And he drank himself to death. They found him, like I said, dead in his house, and he had, I guess, had a pretty established, drinking problem, and that just reinforces that, we really, if you have these issues, drinking is not a solution. It exacerbates whatever problem exists. But I do want to talk about a possible solution. It was, 2 weeks ago on Friday, I will have been discharged with the Intrepid Spirit 5-week program, which I thought was a phenomenal experience. We could do an entire series, or at least a whole other episode, if not, 3 or 4 on Intrepid Spirit itself. It's a TBI clinic, but TBI is really only about 10% of what they actually focus on when they go. But without getting into what all of that is, going through that program and talking to the psychologist and her seeing my previous diagnoses and the previous therapies that I've been through, what worked, what didn't work, she recommended the SGB, the Stellate Ganglion Block, as a potential therapy. And of the cohort of 7 that I went through, myself, I'm not going to even use first name. So there was, 2 other people who do what we do, a CSO. 4 of us had it done all within the same week, and it is pretty phenomenal. So I can jump right into that if you don't have any other questions, Brandon. We can just talk about the procedure and some of the background.
I think the things that you brought up, I was just talking to somebody that we both know that came down for retirement the other day. And I told him, just about like being sober, that all the positives come from it. And I'll acknowledge, right? And this is what I said the other day to him was, drinking did get me through some tough times. Not gonna play some like holier than thou, like, oh, it was all bad. Drinking got me through some tough times, but what I will say is that drinking created some tougher times for me.
Yeah.
So I think I'm always probably always going to be jealous of adults that know how to drink like an adult. I miss that. Apparently it's not for me. And that's just one of those things that, some people can use it as a something to cope with, right? Going through a tough time and like don't know they won't abuse it. That just wasn't my experience. So if there are other alternatives, right, that you're going to talk about, I think those are more, they're definitely healthier alternatives
Right.
than putting your life at risk.
All right, so I'll get into it's very insightful. Yeah, it's, again, it was 3 months of not touching alcohol, and then having to come to my father and say, "Hey, Dad, like I can't drink." I really there was humbling. It was a hurdle I had to overcome. It didn't affect our relationship. He said, "I'm really proud of you." That takes a big man to do those things. I think once we
Right.
kind of get over ourselves, sometimes we're what's in our head is the biggest hurdle of all. And then getting through that and just saying the words like, "Hey, I can't be around, or I can't do this anymore. It's potentially harmful." And it wasn't even a thing. So, yeah. So the SGB is actually, it's a pain management procedure, and one of the side effects is really relaxing, completely depleting, in my case, anxiety. It is an alternative therapy for PTSD. So what is done, and I didn't look at the needle, but a needle's put into your neck. Local anesthetics are injected in, I think it's your C6 vertebrae, thereabout, and they use an ultrasound machine. You have to lie very still. It's an outpatient procedure. It's done in about an hour. And this would be for neck pain. So when these nerves are numbed, there's some psychological side effects. And I knew I carried a lot of anxiety, and a lot of this comes from, the Iraq and Afghanistan, my times out there in combat. And it was almost like an immediate relief. So I'm on to talk about the procedure, right? It was done on Camp Lejeune. It takes about an hour. There's no like fasting requirement. I got some Valium for my vasectomy, but not for this. They give you an IV to keep fluid in you. But it was pretty cool. So Dr. Fu, she's a 06 Navy provider, and she's done. She asked me. She said, "John, is this your first SGB?" I said, "Yes, it is, ma'am. This isn't your first time doing the procedure now, with it?" And she laughed. She goes, "No, I've done about 1,000 of these." So I knew I was in pretty good hands. Now, this isn't something you can necessarily go out in town and get, because it's not FDA approved for a PTSD treatment. It's approved for pain management, but if you're going to mental health, you have to go to like a VA clinic or have it done at a naval or army hospital. You can't just get someone out in town who would normally do it for neck pain to do it for for PTSD or a psychological psychological issue, which is interesting. I have my own theories about some of that. So as an alternative to prescribing, 3, 4, 5 different meds, which are going to have 3, 4, 5 different side effects per med, which are going to interact differently. This was pretty amazing. So I check in there in the morning, and you have to have a driver, because they numb with local anesthetic the site that they're going to put the much larger needle in. And so you kind of look like Two-Face for half the day. You've got a kind of droopy eye, and your neck is going to feel numb. And they hook you up to some leads, and you're sort of laying on this table in a really awkward, weird position. And the nurse practitioner gave me like this little squishy ball to hold. She's like, "Oh, do you want to hold this?" And she was like really funny and playful the whole time. Like, of course, I'm wearing my Hawaiian shirt. I'm like, "Oh, yay, Ted Lasso's here with his mustache." Kind of poking fun at me, and I poke fun back, and it's cool. I'm like, "Why are they giving me this thing to hold? It seems this is kind of odd." And it's pretty intimidating, I guess. So I had my procedure at 8:30. Their 8 o'clock did not show up. I guess that you probably got scared off or something. He just didn't show, which is unfortunate. But I'll get into like, you know, the effects of this later. We'll just kind of get through the procedure right now. So I'm laying there on the table, and they do the initial injections of local anesthetic to the site, the injection site, where they'll then go into the between the vertebrae to block the nerves. And it feels like a little bee sting. It's not too bad. You know, this lady, obviously, this doctor knows what she's doing. She's done this many times. And once they bring out the big needle, there's an immediate emotional response. And that wasn't just with me. I heard you. Yeah, I didn't look at the needle. This is what the needle does to you, right? So my CSO buddy had the exact same response. As they're injecting another anesthetic into your between your vertebrae, it feels like you're getting choked up, like at a funeral or something, like very emotional. And then that breaks and you start to cry. So here I am, a grown-ass man in a hospital gown with a Ted Lasso mustache, holding a squishy ball, crying while two women stick a needle in my neck. Really awkward place to be. And I kind of start to think like, holy shit, you know, how did I get myself into this? And it's not like they're injecting you with sorrows, but them the relaxation of that nerve does something to you know, with its unwinding. I don't know, it numbing, unwinding. This is what we're doing, the unintended side effects of a pain management procedure, and it's an immediate release. Like, and I wasn't bawling like, you know, someone like ran over my pet bunny, but you know, there's immediate tearful like release, and they keep injecting and moving the needle and putting more, and then that just continues. So they keep pumping anesthetic, water keeps coming out of my face, and this is a very common reaction. And then a few minutes later, you're done. So they observe you for about 30 minutes because they were tinkering in your spine to make sure that everything's good, everything's functioning normal. And so you just kind of sit there in your little hospital gown with your squishy ball. And one of the other nurse practitioners, she asked me how I was feeling. I said, I feel very relaxed. I feel really, really good. And remember, this is at a naval hospital, right? Now, some of these practitioners are providers are civilians, but what I'm about to say, you'd be like, what? So this, and she's a probably 50-ish year old Hispanic woman. She goes, a lot of people tell me they feel like they just smoked a joint. And I was like, yeah, man, I feel pretty. And what I mean by that is I feel very relaxed, right? Feel very relaxed. It was funny that she chose that way to describe it to, you know, military members who, you know, if you do use marijuana, you get processed out. So that's not something that I would be a go-to like descriptor, but that's how she described that. That's the word she used. And I was like, yeah, you know, I just feel really, really relaxed. And the effects of this, they've lasted well almost a week. This procedure has to be repeated every 6 to 8 weeks. I already have my next one scheduled. They'll schedule it right there. And again, it's a 1-hour procedure. And I had never really thought my anxiety was so high until it went away. And we're talking about like completely irrational, getting worked up over nothing for no good reason. And I was talking to one of the gentlemen that we both work with, we're not even going to use his name, who's been having, you know, we've been talking about this kind of stuff with him as well. and he was describing some of his anxiety and some of the challenges he's having. And I told him, I was like, you really need to look into this, because this tones all of that way down. And there's, it's not like you're taking 4, 5, 6 different medications. You have an immediate emotional release of just this pent up anger, aggravation, anxiety, and it mentally extremely relaxing. You're not concerned about, the 100 thoughts racing in your head all the time. I hope this speaks to some people. You're not concerned. I mean, what it does is it essentially calms down the fight or flight response. So if you're a first responder, if you've been in combat situations and you potentially have PTSD, if you experience hypervigilance, if you experience you're easily startled, if you're easily irritated, that's why I have these awesome orange glasses. Apparently I have light sensitivity, and this kind of calms things down a little bit. Light, sound sensitivity, that sort of stuff. That turns that volume from 11, I would say probably down to a 2, maybe even more. And it was, even meds can take up to 30 days before you feel their full effects. And it was almost like, remember Benny Hinn, the televangelist who heals people with his coat? He heals the crippled kid with his coat, and all of a sudden, this man who's never walked, by the power of my coat, now he's an all-star, whatever. It was like that. It was like a miraculous, like instant change. As I could just feel the emotional release, and it was absolutely phenomenal. So, my CSO buddy, he was like, yeah, man, I had this done, and I guess his crying delayed. He was in the truck with somebody. He's like, I just started bawling my eyes out, man. I feel so good. He described the scene from Office Space where the main character like just stops giving a shit, and he's like, yeah, I don't care. Oh, whatever. Yeah. It's like, oh man, that's cool. So, and I've noticed, like, even my interactions with my kids, I'm like, yeah, they might be a little loud, they might be a little rambunctious, but I'm like, oh, it doesn't get me all fired up. Going back to Intrepid Spirit, I know now why I react a certain way, to various stimuli. Like, I get why I don't like people shifting around in their chairs, or strange people coming in, the door of a restaurant where I'm sitting with my, position a certain way if I need to react, so I can observe everybody coming and going. You can still, I'm still observant, but I'm not constantly on edge, constantly feeling like something's about to happen, something crazy is going to go down. It's very much just tones all of that down. It's like someone turned on an AC unit in your brain, and you just been sweating your ass off in there, like dying of thirst. And this with a switch, you're like, wow, this is comfortable. Because I think a lot of our
I do have one question, man.
Yeah.
So if you're somebody that wants this treatment, right? Like, because I'm asking because what's been said to me is kind of like, hey, man, whenever you get out of the military, you need to try CBD, right?
Yeah.
I've had several doctors tell me that it's great for pain, it's great for anxiety, but whatever it is, the military is just not budging on that. So is it kind of like something to where it's the procedure happens and then like you feel great, but then like, okay, it wears off in 5 or 6 hours? Or is it something that you have happen every 3 months because it's got extended release? Like, can you explain, like, what if someone wants to go down this path, right? Is this it's a series of 3 injections like PRP? Or is it like, no, this is something you get every 3 months or every 6 months or every month? Or is it indefinite? that you do this like, you know, it's forever? Like can you kind of like share, like what does the procedure look like, the process after you get the procedure?
Right. So what, to answer the question, what happens to those nerves that transmit specifically your fight or flight instincts? And again, I'm not a neurologist. I can't pretend to, again, I having been through the procedure, been through Intrepid Spirit, and read some articles. I'm going to use some very layman's terms, but they're using a local anesthetic for this procedure. So really they're anesthetizing the nerves that transmit these communications, right? So the effects last 4 to 6 weeks, 4 to 8 weeks. And it depends on per person.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a follow-up, a second one scheduled in August. And from talking to the providers, they've explained that usually the second and subsequent follow-on SGBs are more powerful than the first. So more to follow on that. Now, to get referred, because I'm sure that question will come up if you didn't already ask it, you got to talk to a mental health provider. So the great thing about Intrepid Spirit is I got to sit down. It was like once every 2 weeks with 2 MDs, one of which is a neurologist, a psychologist who's a PhD, PhD with a physical therapy, a neuropsych who's a PhD, and maybe a nurse. But I mean, everybody's like a PhD or an MD to talk about your progress, to talk about how your treatment's going, new potential, adding more treatments or adding more therapies or taking things away, whatever. So your psychologist, your mental health provider, because he or she can't prescribe, it'll take an MD or a psychiatrist to do that. You can mention, I heard about the SGB. I think I'd be a good fit for it. My provider just brought up, said, I think this would be really good for you, given your experience and your PTSD diagnosis. This is very much the same model that we treat here. You got a lot of guys from, MARSOC, EOD cats, and those people who have combat backgrounds, and this is a recommended. I've seen it very successful for them. I said, okay, I'm willing to try anything. I actually told them I'm not doing meds because I've done meds before, and I've seen that go a number of ways. I'm just not a huge fan. So I was exposed to acupuncture, the alpha stimulator, which we both, you and I have talked about before, or the alpha waves, and then the AVE stimulator. So we want to talk about pain management and acupuncture, electric acupuncture, which is super spicy. I can tell you all about that another time. Where they did to my knees, it was amazing. The great thing about this clinic is everybody who works there obviously wants to be there, and they're very proficient. It's not like you show up to BAS, like, here's your Motrin and socks, go change them. But back to the question, you're going to have to get referred to it through a mental health provider. And again, it'll have to be done at a VA clinic or a military clinic, because it's not approved via the FDA. It's approved for pain management, but not for mental health. And I have my own theories about why that could be, because that's perhaps a side topic. So if you're interested in it, that's how you get referred. It's something that will have to be done continually. I don't know if it's over the course of your lifetime or up until retirement, when other therapies or therapeutic options, like you brought up with CBD, become an option, like become available. But for active duty, or someone who isn't excited about taking meds, or has taken meds and just didn't like the side effects, I think this is a really great option. I think the efficacy rate of this is like somewhere to 80%. So 80% of people who have this done. Again, I'm going to post 2 articles. One's from Forbes. I thought was pretty good. Not that I'm a Forbes fan, but just having been through the procedure and reading a multitude of articles, I said this one kind of summarizes my experience the best. So I'll include that in the show notes. so folks can read about it and get not my layman's uh, uh, not my layman's explanation of what this procedure is. Did that kind of answer the
Yeah.
question, Brandon? Okay.
No, it makes sense just because I've had certain procedures, right? Like you said, the acupuncture, like with electric or stimulated
Yeah.
acupuncture. And those are things that they kind of give to you and like, yeah, we'll do it 2 or 3 times a week and we'll do it for about 4 weeks. And then, but it's kind of anticipated or expected, like, yeah, you do it every few days and then it's over.
Yeah.
And I always feel great, right, of all these
Yeah.
procedures. But then it's like, add 6 months later, well, do I need to go back? Like, and I guess it really comes down to, mental health, physical health. Those just become, I think, enduring, not problems, but enduring tasks to like take care of.
They
Right.
are,
So like
man.
I've not found anything that makes me pain free. I've found many things that help with pain. Same with like, mental health. I've not found any drug or any medication or any therapy that's made me just say, like, you know what, everything is easy now. I don't have problems. So I am asking because I think it's important, at least for me, that before I start on a journey, I
Yeah.
have, manage my own expectations of like, is this my life, the rest of my life, or is this like, no, I'm gonna knock this out, next week, and then I'm good. So that's the reason I asked. But yeah, I appreciate you talking about it.
Well, so one of the same provider who mentioned the joint, she asked me, she goes, "Have you scheduled your second one?" And I was like, "Well, no, I had not yet. When do I do?" She goes, "You can do that from the front, at the front office." And she goes, "Your wife will let you know when it's time." Right. So there is an expectation that this does wear off as those nerves become you know now regain whatever from the anesthetic. Once that anesthetic wears off over time, um, unfortunately, like that anxiety will probably build. All of these things will probably come back. It's not. I mean, I can still function, right? Um, but I tell you, it is so much nicer to not. You feel like an immediate release of weight. It'd be like you were carrying 100-pound pack, and then someone's like, "Oh, hey, you don't need that. You can put all that stuff. Oh, the pack's now 20 pounds. Holy shit! Like I can move." And you still have concerns. You still can feel sorrow and pain and all. It doesn't numb your emotions. It just really it turns down a lot of, I think, negativity, and that was my experience. Because I also beat myself up pretty bad. I said this aloud doing one of our cohort group therapies about, I said, yeah, I have a pretty poor representation of a Marine Corps officer. And there was a sergeant major in my cohort. And he got some satisfaction of hearing me say that, I think. But he's a good guy. He kind of chuckled. And I know a lot of veterans or a lot of active duty guys that beat themselves up. There's a lot of negative, like not fun, self-deprecating thoughts that go on, like, I should be this, I'm not this, I'm not meeting the standard, I'm below standard, I'm a low performer, I'm this, that, and the other thing. It's like, I actually told this guy, I was like, hey man, are you going to teach your kids? Because he was concerned about his fitness report having gone there and being out. And he was like, I don't know, if I'm going to, what my ranking's going to be. And for those who don't know what a fitness report, it's like a Marine Corps report card for how good you did at your job. And that's, the boards will look at this for promotion. I said, hey man, have you taught your kids to read a master brief sheet yet? And this is something you would have to sit down and learn how to read this report card, because at face value, it doesn't mean much. And he's like, what are you talking about? I was like, well, if you're so concerned with that, man, like, teach your kids how to read it. So when you're gone, and they've left this world, they can, tell each other how good you were, how well you performed when you were, at the 06 command. And he was like, whoa. I was like, yeah, this shit doesn't matter, dude. It doesn't.
Yeah.
You're getting worked up over something in your brain. And so what? I don't know if you realize this, Brandon. 33.34% of all sergeants major are bottom third performers. Wow.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, man. I've never heard it put that way, but I think it's a good point that if you're sitting there stressing about stuff and beating yourself up about it, if you put in the context of like, would you encourage your child to beat themselves up about it? Would you
Right.
encourage, like it kind of shows you how much power you give to something that no doubt is important to some degree, right? Like I'm not trying to say that none of these things matter because, you know, even though you may not agree with like and in you as a person. Um, and to some degree, they're important because they give you something to quantify, accomplishments. And as you climb, I do think, and I agree with you, Matt. I think we empower them. We give them way too much power, like real estate inside of our. Um, when it comes down to like what is really important and like what matters right now. So I think it's a really good point, good analogy.
Yeah, thanks. I thought of that like kind of on the spot and was like, you're gonna teach your kids to read this stuff so they can say, man, when dad was working 16-hour days and we didn't see him, like your kids care about birthday parties. Did you dress up for Halloween this year? You got Halloween. I got big Halloween plans. I do this every year. Yeah, how was Christmas morning? Like, how was that vacation you took? Nobody cares that you worked. Say nobody cares. I'm sure the colonel cares. But your family, those important, the people that are gonna, when you retire, that are gonna hopefully be with you, should that family stay intact, uh, they don't care about that, man. That's a huge, it goes back to that negative self-talk, beating yourself up about nonsense. When it's like the Marine Corps can't afford to lose its bottom third performers and cut a third. That's just fact of the matter. I was probably pretty good as a staff sergeant. I was really good as a sergeant, pretty good as a staff sergeant, pretty good as a gunny, and I'm not the greatest now, but I'm okay with it. It's fine, right? And my daughter came home. She was so proud. She had A's, B's, and a C. And some parents are like, "Oh, this C." I said, "Hey, Lily, you did a really good job. That's awesome that you got A's and you got that B, and that C's. That's okay. That's good. You did really great work. I'm really proud of you. You grew a lot this year because I know my parents did push me to get good, get good grades and do well, and that's okay. But I was like, man, I'm not going to make this a thing. Like growing up in today's world, you already have enough to deal with. So I was like, man, I'm proud of those A's and B's you earned. I'm not even going to talk about the damn C. Who cares? You're in fourth grade. So, but yeah, it's been a really good experience. I'm
Yeah,
really looking forward to
I
the
think
second one.
so. I will say that like an important part there being that like we're talking about someone in fourth grade, right? We're
Yeah,
not talking about somebody that just got evaluated on are they able to dispose of bombs correctly.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
we're talking about a fourth grader, right? That like is just learning how to learn.
Yeah, this wasn't EOD school where we are
Yeah,
taking apart the dirty nukes or anything. Yeah, you want that person to get all A's, right? Like when
right.
you it's just
Yeah.
like you want to be an expert on the rifle range, right? Because if your enemy gets an A before you do, that's a bad thing, right? But we were talking, yeah, fourth grade, like, yeah, it's probably everything's got to be taken in some kind of context, some kind of perspective, because going full send all the time, it just I did that for a while, and it damn near broke me. Um, I know you've had to sort of prioritize things in your life as well, and I think that's a huge part of learning and growing as men, and women, as adults, to figure out like, hey, what is really important? What am I gonna put first? And what am I really not going to invest in, as we age, as we get older? Like, is it really that important anymore? It's important to somebody maybe, but, um, how is this going to affect my family life, my marriage? Those are the questions that I'm asking myself. So I think going back to like the not drinking thing, or at least not drinking the hard liquor, that was, how does it impact my marriage? How does it impact my kids? Like, yeah, liquor needs to go away. It's got no place anymore. It causes more, you say something weird, you say something you don't mean, you sleep in a little too late, you fall asleep when you should, whatever. It had to go, and it was time. And I think that we got to grow as people and just and constantly learn about ourselves. And if something needs to leave, go away, cut out of your life, then don't hang on to that, because especially if it's toxic, get rid of it, man. So that's a good message I wanted to share. I'm going to keep talking to that guy at work that we were, we're not going to name his name just because, but and see if there's something he wants to do, because I was sharing the experience with him. I was like, man, it's like a switch. Now, unfortunately, the results are fleeting, but I would definitely go lay on that table again, hug that little stress ball, cry my eyes out in front of two women. Definitely well worth that. So those are my thoughts. Do you have anything else, man? I know we're looking real good on time here today.
No, man, I think it's, like I said, I'm interested about it. Part of me is really wanting to ask pain management why they didn't say anything about it this morning, but
yeah,
try not be bitter. Try not be bitter about my situation, and just kind of be happy for your situation. Because all I got out of pain management was a referral, and we'll call it a check in the box referral for ortho. And the doctor says, like, I'd have nothing. Let's just send you back over there and see what they say. And I've been through this dance for so many years, like my whole career. So it's almost kind of like, okay, man, like that's cool, right? Give me a new appointment. And I do think that like it's really hard for people that in the military and receive free healthcare
no, it ain't free, buddy.
to truly understand what the word free means. In terms of, free means you don't get to pick your provider. Free means that you're seen at next available, right? Which in my case is, I think, 1 month.
Yeah.
Right. Had to wait 1 month. 1 month. I got the referral, and they said our first available, I think it was July 27th. And the thing is that because I'm so accustomed to that over 19 years, I don't need, that's not a bad thing anymore. Right.
Yeah.
But if you talk to somebody that's not, then the idea of waiting 1 month, right, to see a doctor for a referral, just to have them look at you, is it's crazy.
Well, it's
But,
like
I'll definitely say,
I tore my bicep and I had an MRI 2 days later, and I called like, oh, we can see you in 30 days. And I was like, no, I didn't swear or say bad things to the lady on the phone, but I communicated. And so I got a call back in like 3 hours. Said, no, you're scheduled for surgery. Like that's, but if I hadn't been forward and hadn't been like, no, then I don't know if I could have done additional damage to it. But again, not seen for 30 days, like it's like a battered spouse thing. It's he didn't hit me this week. Like we're doing real good. He hadn't hit me yet again. And it's like, that's a bad standard to have, dude. So
right. No, that's why I say, like, I think it's great. I think it's something, any other opportunity, man, that, because not every therapy or whatever works for everybody. So I think having just another possible, right, another COA,
and I really
gives people an opportunity to kind of look into it.
I wondered and wished, like, why wasn't this? I've been doing this mental health stuff for, man, it's been like well over 2 years. Why wasn't this ever brought up before? This would have, man, but better, better now than never. I'm very thankful for the opportunity. I look forward to the next one, and I'll let you know, how it goes. But I'm really enjoying it. I think it's not miraculous, but it is an immediate switch. And I'll leave that as my final thought. That it's absolutely well worth checking into. Potentially game changing. So appreciate everybody's time. Thanks for listening in. I'm going to throw those articles in the notes, and be good to each other. We'll see you later, Brandon.
Hey, see you later, brother.
All right.